Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, fellow classmates, and professor. This is my overview of my paper with the topic, The New Modern Day Civil Rights Movement, and I call it the Dream Effect. 7 years ago, our forefathers brought forth to this land a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. From Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. The civil rights movement of the past was a political, social, economic, advocacy campaign, and it focused on the pursuit of happiness and justice for black people, specifically in the United States, from 1954 to 1968, approximately. The main goals were to help abolish legalized racial segregation, cruel Jim Crow laws, racial discrimination, injustice, racial bigotry, and hatred in these United States. Of course, we know that racial discrimination is still with us, and bigotry still exists today, even though we have hate crime legislation and greater federal government enforcement and protections. The movement became necessary when one more broken promise of the United States Constitution and its guarantees by the federal government for protection in our homes, our schools, our churches, the right to vote, to protest peaceably, and the pursuit of happiness. Dr. Martin Luther King was the face, the voice, and the national leader of the civil rights movement of the past, and one who believed in nonviolent protests, like community sit-in, business boycotts, large crowd marches, and peaceful protests. Now, as I said, the civil rights movement of the past was based on the color of one's skin. The new modern day civil rights movement that I propose has some of the old activities and focus, but it will be open to more than just black people. It includes Hispanic Americans, Jewish Americans, Asian Americans, gays, lesbians, LGBTQ communities. The new civil rights movement is a nonprofit organization designed to help people who have almost no voice. They're being bullied at home and at work, subject to racial profiling, unfair stops and frisk laws, police brutality, and unlawful police shootings. This is still the great United States of America, a country of law and order, and the belief in the highest law of the land, the U.S. Constitution, the rule of law, and the U.S. Supreme Court. I will discuss some of the historical background of the civil rights movement, what events directly caused the movement, and the most important, U.S. Supreme Court decision before the civil rights movement of the past. Also, I'll mention slave reparations for those black people who are descendants of slaves, and what the United States government should do to pay the debt that is owed to so many people for human rights violations. Well, the new civil rights movement, the Dream Effect. Let us first give some definition for the civil rights for most people in this country. And surely one can depend on our local, state, federal government to ensure protection for all people in this land. To define civil rights and provide some of the new and best examples of these rights, I'm using a paraphrase from one of the most advanced cities in America, the austintexas.gov 2020. The city of Austin, which took bold steps to secure civil rights in February of 2021, and protections for all of its citizens by creating the Office of Civil Rights, with the hiring of its first ever civil rights officer. The Office of Civil Rights is charged with enforcing civil rights protections, which guarantees equal social, economic opportunities, equal protection under the law, regardless of your race, religion, color, other personal characteristics. Some examples of a person's civil rights are the right to vote, the right to a speedy trial, the right to a trial by jury of your peers, trial by judge, the right to government services, the right to a public education, the right to seek gainful employment, the right to fair housing, the right to use public facilities, and freedom of religion and still others. Civil rights are an essential component of democracy, and when individuals are being denied opportunities to participate in the political society, they're being denied their civil rights, guaranteed by the highest law in our land, the U.S. Constitution. In contrast to civil liberties, which are freedoms that are secured by placing restraints on government, civil rights are secured by positive government actions, often in the form of local, state, and federal congressional legislation. Protest movements are usually difficult to include in history books and videos because of the pain, the suffering, the civil disobedience, and all of the disruptions that they caused, and many disruptions that have been caused by many cowards, bigots, bullies, and those who want to do harm to less fortunate people of color. However, the United States was changing and leaning towards the direction of political, social conservatism during the civil rights movement of the past, and it was gaining in popularity with the leadership of, again, the non-violent leader, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Next, I'll talk about some of the historical background. Now, before I talk about the historical background that I covered in my advocacy campaign paper, let me first mention some of the additional civil rights in the new civil rights movement. It was designed for, like I said, all citizens who feel discriminated against, bullied, racial profile, a hate crime victim, and other human rights violations. These individuals are the target audience. And yes, it was difficult to go back and look at some of the problems. Well, in the new modern day civil rights movement, social media and fundraising events. Wow, this is the fun part. Weekly YouTube videos. Over 250 million Americans are using YouTube. And around the world, wow, billions, 2-3 billion are using YouTube. Citywide co-ed softball games among all ethnic groups. But I think we should probably start with children and teenagers. So that, because again, parents have to come because you have to support your children. And this gives people, and we start one community at a time. And this for men and women. And again, it gives people an opportunity to see how much fun and how much we have in common. It doesn't matter the color of our skin. That is ludicrous to think that someone is better or worse because of the color of their skin, the amount of melanin, in their in their blood. That's amazing that someone would be so small to think like this. Well, again, back to social media. Again, I'm a big fan of YouTube, so I'd like to see at least 2 or 3 videos, again, about the sporting games that we will put on volunteers free of charge. But again, it is a fundraiser. So, give whatever you want to give. But this new civil rights movement will be funded by private donations, and maybe there is some government opportunity to make some donations as well. But again, I'm a big believer in how sports can help bring people together. It happened in the Olympics when the Greeks first put them on. It's one of the great things that we do in the world, where all countries send their best runners, their best jumpers, their best pole vaulters, the best soccer players. And we meet and made the best team or individual win. And we clap for all of them because they're warriors, great warriors for their respective countries, men and women. Well, let me mention more about, again, soccer and track competitions, car washes, and we put these videos on every week, 2 or 3 videos where you see people smiling, having fun, having water fights. But these are volunteer participants, and they're requested to share their information on Facebook and Twitter and all of these social medias that they use to show others, not just in the United States and in their community, but around the world. They see how much fun it is, again, to make friends and to compete with people, and again, may the best team win. Have walking contests so everybody can participate. Maybe we have a walking contest where you have to carry a child with you, a 1-mile race. You have to carry a child on your back, men and women. See, these are the kinds of fun things that we can do with adults and children because we believe strongly in family in the new modern day civil rights movement. And it includes everybody. It is inclusive. Let the world know we're Americans. We believe in the rule of law and the United States Constitution, where all men and women are created equal. Oh, I love that part. All men and women are created equal, and all of the others in between. Okay? It's just a picture of two, people playing baseball and soccer and having fun, and everybody, are invited to support your family, support your kids, and we'll do that. I think most of us, we love our families in the United States. That's what makes our country strong. Well, let's talk about the historical background of where we've come from. And I will admit it's difficult to go back and look at some of the things that have happened and some of the things that were going on in the past, even during those traditional years that I mentioned for the civil rights from 1954 to 1968. But you may want to know what got us here. What caused this civil rights movement where Dr. King became the leader? Wow, we have to go way back. And, well, let me mention President Abraham Lincoln. We basically say Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. Well, according to his proclamation, his proclamation, so as I mentioned, his President Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, 1865, it freed all African slaves, all black slaves, and all slaves, period, in the United States of America. Now, we know that just because the president puts out a message like that and makes law, that's good enough to change everybody's mind. It's not. Okay? It is absolutely not. And then President Abraham Lincoln signed the reparations for slaves so that they would have, and that's where you hear about the 40 acres of land and a mule. Most people and most everybody in the United States, they were rural. They were farmers. And so that would have been a great start for the African slaves after, slavery. Well, That was short-lived. And I must say that a number of people, very important people, people with big hearts, they died supporting what they believe in. President John F. Kennedy was assassinated right here in Texas, Dallas, Texas. 1963. My goodness. It's not too long ago. And it was here in Dallas, Texas. Probably had something to do with the civil rights movement. Surely. Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated in 1963. Probably had something to do with his beliefs. So what kind of country do we live in where you can be killed for the beliefs that you have? Well, I won't spend a lot of time on that because I don't have that much time anyway. I'm already at 16 minutes. So let me show, that's Malcolm X. Malcolm X believed, and he was assassinated as well. That's Rosa Parks in the middle. Rosa Parks, there's a story there, and you have to hear that one, is one of the greatest business boycotts that you'll ever see, and it was very, very successful. Well, as I mentioned, Rosa Parks is one of the most famous women and famous people among black people in this country, and probably to a lot of people, particularly in Alabama. That's where it was, Montgomery, Alabama. She refused to give up her seat so that a white man could sit down. That was the policy at the time. That was the law. Can you believe it? There was a law. Yes. And she refused to give up her seat, so the police were summoned in 1955, and she went to jail. And she had to pay a fine, and the NAACP representative with their lawyer bailed her out. But she still had to go to court. She lost her case. She was found guilty. Wow. It seems almost unbelievable that that could have happened. But it did. Fellow classmates, when I look back at some of the historical background of the past civil rights movement, you saw signs like this by young African-American guys. I am a man. Many didn't believe, didn't treat you like a human. And really, the new modern day civil rights movement that I propose should probably be called the human rights movement, where everyone is treated with dignity and respect. Here's a picture also of the March on Washington, one of the most famous marches, nonviolent. There was over 250,000 people that were there, white and black, to hear the nonviolent speaker, the leader of the movement. Okay? And that was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Well, there are many other pictures that I could show, and I learned so much about the background. One of the famous Supreme Court cases. Yes, one of the famous Supreme Court cases happened in 1896. The Supreme Court, here we go again. And they said that separate but equal was okay. So it became the law of the land. And that's why you got all of these schools where they separated blacks and whites. There's a black school, there's a white school. Okay? Libraries, water fountains, all public facilities. That's where the cities and towns got the power to be able to put these signs up. It says for whites only, for blacks only. Restaurants where you have to enter in the back. And it's just absolutely horrid when I think back to that. But it was the law of the land, the U.S. Supreme Court, and it kept on. It went in effect 1896, and it lasted all the way till 1954. My goodness, that's almost 60 years of being treated like a second-class citizen. And then finally, in 1954, wow, the U.S. Supreme Court came back and said separate but equal is inherently unequal. And we thank God for that. Let me just mention very quickly my code of ethics. My code of ethics, there are 8 of them, and I said that these are absolutely extraordinarily important if you're going to run an organization that is supposed to be above board and represent all people, blacks, browns, lesbians, gays, Jews, all of those people that are being put down for whatever reason. Well, in my first code of ethics, and I'm inspired by the words of Transparency International. I liked what they said. In order to achieve our vision of a world which government, politics, business, a civil society, and the daily lives of people are free of corruption. Now, I said, this is quite naive of a position to take, and yet I join with them in the fight against corruption, low ethical standards of behavior, and a wanting for greater integrity from the American people, corporations, and campaigns. So, here's my list. I started with honesty. Honesty is my first code of ethics. The advocacy campaign should involve and be based on people that are honest and will tell the truth, even if they think it may hurt their own positions and agendas. A part of being honest is to tell the truth and be willing to acknowledge when one is wrong or they misstated the facts, or be willing to apologize for hurting someone else. Honesty, facts, fairness, straightforwardness. We know what it is, and it's awfully important. If you're going to work in an organization, if you're going to work in my new modern day campaign, civil rights campaign, you have to be honest. Okay. Number 2, integrity, as a quality of being honest and showing a consistent, uncompromising adherence to strong moral and ethical principles and values. In ethics, integrity is regarded as the honesty and truthfulness of lost my spot. And showing a consistent, uncompromising adherence to strong moral, ethical principles and values. Integrity is regarded as the honesty and truthfulness or earnestness of one's actions. Integrity can stand in opposition to hypocrisy. When used to describe a person, integrity refers to living by one's own values and principles. It means being true and authentic to the code of beliefs and ideals which others can rely on and be consistent. The next one, no corruption and bribes. Well, that's difficult because we got political leaders at the high level, we got them in local government, and corruption is real. Money has been said to be the root of all evil, and it is difficult to turn down a large sum of money or a new yacht or special favors provided by a special interest group. We know what they do, and we know why they do it. They want their own agenda, their own laws, their own new legislation that will favor their business or their individual interests. So how do we not get involved in quid pro quo? It's dangerous and sinister when money is power. For your information, Switzerland is officially called a small country in Central Europe. It is supposed to be one of the world's wealthiest countries and has been well known for centuries for its neutrality and the #1 least corrupt country in the world, Switzerland. Wow. Number 4, transparency. Transparency is about being open and honest about a campaign or large corporations, operations, and dealings. These corporations and campaigns that openly share their information with all shareholders, including employees and customers, about their mission, values, processes, sources, pricing, and performance. Well, that's transparency. We know you got to be open so people can check your books. Conflict of interest. You can't hire all your family in a corporation or in an institution or in government. It's a conflict of interest. This should never be a problem for a corporation or political campaign, for an election or re-election to sell more product or gain favors from special interest groups or get more donations. Marketing a new product and running a new campaign for high office of very similar and positive results is what matters most of all. To win. Number 6, accountability. Well, who is the business or campaign accountable to, and when, and how can we make a deal to make this look better so we can control the narrative? Businesses and institutions always want to report that they had a better quarter than last year. They made more money. And our finances are moving in the right direction. Well, accountability. This information must be received and necessary actions taken, and the information must be used to improve performance, correct deficiencies, or reward superior services. That's accountability. Everybody's got to be accountable or responsible to somebody else that can make a difference. I also propose civic and community responsibility. If you're going to have an advocacy campaign, you know, all the workers and volunteers and, you know, paid people, they have to be involved in community responsibility and do their civic duties in the community where business and campaign operates, where the advocacy campaign is located, should be invested in the local community. Little League baseball games, jerseys for the kids, volunteer drives, or help with Girl Scout cookies, high school band trips, a car wash, social media, and of course all of these will be recorded and they're put on the social media, YouTube, Facebook, so people can see in the community, in the state, in other states, and around the world what's going on in our community. And then lastly, code compliance, inspections. Some of you, most of us, we know what that is. In my housing community in Dallas previously, you know, code compliance. They'll ride by and see, you know, is your house, is it painted? Is the yard trimmed? Very, very important requirement for advocacy campaigns and to help ensure that the campaign and its employees are doing their jobs with honesty and integrity. So help me God. Well, let me end this about now. And let me talk about, in the last 2 minutes, the civil rights movement was enormously successful of the past and has made the world safer for everyone, including Jews, Gentiles, blacks, browns, lesbians, gays alike. We now have new civil rights laws, hate crime laws, even online policies against bullies and against those who want to harm others that may not look like them, that may be a little different, that may love somebody a little different. The new modern day civil rights movement, called the Dream Effect, is designed to help all people who are oppressed, hated, demonized, criticized because of the color of their skin or who they love. We've come a long way, and yet we still have a long way to go in 2024. We still have to deal with the fact that everybody deserves respect and dignity and the rights to freedom and justice for all. My final evaluation, I'm so impressed with the men and women of the past civil rights movement who, many of them, gave their lives, white and black, and others, who fought for freedom and respect for African Americans, brown people, Asians, Jews. And yes, they're the ones that have been targeted for hate and discrimination. People of all colors, races, men, women, risk their very lives to advance the cause for the next generation of Americans, your children, your grandchildren, and mine. I'm extremely grateful and thankful to all who have lived before me, come before me, and risked their lives and livelihoods to make the world a safer and better place for me, and as I said, all the grandchildren and children, for all Americans. We must decide to work together if we want to be called a great nation, and to live together in harmony and help defend the rights of all others without regard to fear of suffering, pain, or discomfort. The great United States of America wants to be on the right side of history and help defend the weak nations, our allies. They are our friends against terrorists and hatred. Thank you.